The heavy silence in the office pressed down on Jungkook like a weight he couldn't shake off. The long mahogany table stretched between him and the man who now held the strings of his future. At the head of it sat Taehyung, heir to one of the most powerful conglomerates in the country, effortlessly composed in a charcoal grey suit. His posture was immaculate, his expression unreadable, and his presence suffocating. In front of Jungkook lay a thick stack of papers. The words marriage contract stamped at the top looked less like a promise and more like a cage. 2 years. Taehyung's deep voice broke the silence. It wasn't loud, but it was commanding, each syllable precise, deliberate. For 24 months, you'll be my spouse on paper. Appear with me at events. Keep the press satisfied. Play the role. Jungkook's hands curled into fists in his lap. His throat tightened as he tried to steady his voice. And in return, my family's debts disappeared. Taehyung's gaze flickered, just slightly, and then settled on him with the weight of a storm. Yes. I'll cover everything. But don't misunderstand, this isn't out of charity. You're a solution to a problem. Nothing more. Jungkook swallowed, his pride crumbling under the reminder of why he was here. His father's company was weeks away from bankruptcy. His mother's tears haunted him. His sister's pleading eyes wouldn't leave his mind. And in the end, Jungkook was the one chosen to save them. At the cost of his freedom. His eyes dropped to the contract. The clauses blurred as he skimmed. Restrictions, conditions, even an agreement that they would keep their personal lives separate. No expectations. No intimacy. It should have been easy. Just play the part for 2 years. Endure. Survive. But when Jungkook lifted his eyes, meeting Taehyung's cold, unyielding stare, a shiver ran down his spine. This wasn't a man who left room for mistakes. What happens? Jungkook asked, voice trembling despite his efforts. If I break the contract? Taehyung leaned back in his chair, elegant fingers steepling together. His eyes glinted with something sharp, almost cruel. Then your family is ruined. And you'll be ruined with them. The word struck like a whip. Jungkook's breath hitched, but he forced his hand to move. The pen felt heavy between his fingers, like he were signing away a piece of himself. His signature bled across the page. With that one motion, Jungkook was no longer just himself. He was now Kim Taehyung's contract spouse. The sound of Taehyung's pen clicking shut was final, like a judge slamming the gavel. He stood, sliding the papers into his briefcase. Pack your things. You'll move into my penthouse tomorrow. Jungkook blinked, startled. Tomorrow? Did you think you'd have time to reconsider? Taehyung's voice was cool, detached. His gaze swept over Jungkook one last time before he walked out of the office, leaving behind only the faint trace of his cologne and a silence that felt suffocating. Jungkook sat there long after the door closed, staring at the contract that now bound him to a man who looked at him like nothing more than a business deal. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't know yet, was that this cold agreement would become the beginning of something far more dangerous, far more complicated, and far more consuming than either of them could have planned. The elevator ride to the top floor of the luxury high-rise felt endless. Jungkook stood clutching the strap of his worn backpack, his heart hammering in his chest. His suitcase sat at his feet, a pitiful contrast to the polished metal walls reflecting back his nervous expression. What am I doing here? He thought bitterly. Just yesterday, he was Jungkook, ordinary, broke, desperate. Today, he was moving into the penthouse of Kim Taehyung. the man he was now married to on paper. The elevator chimed softly. The doors slid open to reveal a space so vast and pristine it felt more like a museum than a home. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows that stretched across the skyline, furniture arranged in sharp, modern lines. Everything screamed wealth and elegance, everything screamed Taehyung. And yet, it felt cold. Too cold. Don't just stand there, the voice cut through his thoughts. Jungkook turned sharply to find Taehyung leaning against the doorframe of the living room, hands tucked in his pockets. He looked effortlessly striking in a black turtleneck and slacks, his sharp jawline cast in the soft evening light. Jungkook stumbled, dragging his suitcase inside. Sorry, Taehyung's eyes flicked down at the suitcase, then back at him. His expression remained unreadable. Your room is down the hall. Last door on the left. We won't be sharing a bedroom. Something in Jungkook's chest sank, though he told himself he shouldn't care. Of course they wouldn't. This was a contract, not a marriage. Still, the bluntness of Taehyung's tone stung. Got it, Jungkook muttered, biting his lip. He tugged his suitcase toward the hallway. But Taehyung's voice stopped him. Dinner is at 7. If you're late, don't bother showing up. Jungkook froze, then turned just enough to glance at him. Do you always talk to people like that for the first time? Taehyung's lips curved, though not into a smile. More of a smirk, sharp and mocking. Only to people who think they're more important than they are. The words burned, but Jungkook swallowed his retort. Instead, he dragged his suitcase down the hall, each step heavier than the last. Dinner that evening was a quiet war. The dining table stretched long, the space between them exaggerated by polished silverware and untouched wine glasses. Jungkook pushed his food around his plate, appetite gone. Taehyung ate with precise movements, not sparing him a glance. Finally, Jungkook broke the silence. You don't have to ignore me, you know. We're married now. Even if it's just fake. Taehyung's knife and fork paused mid-cut. Slowly, he lifted his gaze, pinning Jungkook with eyes so sharp they could cut glass. This isn't about ignoring you. It's about keeping boundaries clear. The more you expect from this arrangement, the more disappointed you'll be. Jungkook clenched his jaw. I'm not expecting anything. Good, Taehyung said simply, returning to his meal. Keep it that way. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Jungkook stared at the table, fingers curling tight around the fork. 1,000 retorts rose in his throat, but none left his lips. He realized something then. Kim Taehyung wasn't just cold. He was impenetrable. And yet, when Jungkook dared a glance at him again, he caught something fleeting in Taehyung's eyes. A shadow. A loneliness so well hidden it almost didn't exist. Jungkook blinked, and just like that, it was gone. That night, lying awake in the unfamiliar bed, Jungkook stared at the ceiling. The city lights glared through the curtains, but they didn't comfort him. He told himself he could endure this. 2 years. That's all it was. But deep down, something whispered that this cold, impossible man down the hall was going to break him in ways he didn't yet understand. The days slipped into a strange routine. Taehyung woke before dawn, dressed sharply, and disappeared into his empire of meetings and business deals. He returned late, long after Jungkook had cooked for himself and cleaned up the empty kitchen. It was like living with a shadow, one that sometimes passed through the hall, sometimes brushed by him in silence, but never really touched him. Jungkook told himself it didn't matter. It wasn't supposed to matter. And yet, every time he set two plates on the table and watched one remain untouched, something inside him tightened. One evening, Jungkook decided he'd had enough. The dining table was set neatly, the food steaming, the clock striking 7 sharp. Jungkook sat there waiting, telling himself Taehyung would come. But when the door finally opened, it was past 9. Taehyung strode in, jacket draped over his arm, tie loosened at the collar. He didn't even glance at the table. You didn't have to wait. Eat on your own next time. Jungkook's chair scraped harshly against the floor as he stood. His patience snapped. Do you even realize how insulting that is? Taehyung stilled, one eyebrow arching as he set his briefcase down. Excuse me, I cooked. I waited. And you didn't even bother to call? Am I supposed to just sit here like a decoration until you decide I exist? The words came out sharper than Jungkook intended, but he didn't take them back. His heart pounded, heat rising to his cheeks. Taehyung's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping lower, steadier. You knew what this was when you signed the contract. You are not here for romance. You are not here for comfort. Don't confuse your role. Jungkook's fists clenched. I'm not confusing anything. I know this isn't real. But I'm still a human being, Taehyung. A little respect isn't part of your contract, is it? For the first time, Taehyung's mask cracked. His jaw tightened, and his gaze burned with restrained anger. Or was it frustration? His presence filled the room, sharp and suffocating, but Jungkook refused to look away. The silence stretched until finally, Taehyung spoke. You think you want my attention, Jungkook. But trust me, you don't. The words cut deeper than Jungkook expected. His chest ached, but he held his ground. Then stop pretending you don't notice me at all. Their eyes locked, the air charged with something neither could name. For a brief, dangerous second, Jungkook thought Taehyung might step closer, close the space between them. But Taehyung turned away instead, his voice cold again. Ate your dinner. I won't be joining. He walked down the hall, leaving Jungkook standing at the table, chest heaving, eyes stinging with emotions he didn't want to feel. That night, Jungkook sat on the edge of his bed, replaying the argument. He should have been angry. He should have sworn never to care again. And yet, all he could think about was the flicker he saw in Taehyung's eyes, an unspoken struggle, a shadow of something more than the cold front he wore so perfectly. It scared Jungkook. Because the more he saw it, the harder it was becoming to remind himself, this wasn't real.